Shocking! White neighbor rages over illegal black wedding. You want to believe the groom's secret. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the quiet suburban street where a ruckus brewed. Lush green lawns neatly trimmed, white picket fences standing in rigid perfection, and families going about their ordinary lives, all shattered by the cacophony of laughter and celebration spilling from the Jones backyard. The retreat had become an epicenter of joy, but just beyond, Clara Werner's face twisted into a grimace of rage. She stood on her porch, arms crossed tightly, eyes blazing with fury, as she watched the scene unfold before her. What should have been a simple wedding, two souls promising forever, had morphed into a battleground of culture, suspicion, and scandal. Voices crescendoed with joy, the music pulsating like a heartbeat of life. But Clara's harsh whispers slithered through the air. This isn't right. They have no right to celebrate here. A chill slipped down her spine, unresolved anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Why did this celebration provoke such violent emotions? As guests danced, the bride's satin gown glimmered in the fading sunlight, white against the vibrant hues of a summer sunset. But just as this joyous moment peaked, Clara's blood boiled with the discovery of something far more ominous beneath a veil of bliss. The groom Elliot had been spotted whispering to a man in a dark suit outside the party, their expressions concealed under the shadows of the soon-to-be night. Clara's heart raced. What were they talking about? Who was this mysterious man? But before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Fury mingled with anticipation as Clara contemplated her next move. Would she confront the couple? Silence enveloped the scene, then an unexpected crack of a twig broke the tension. Clara flinched. Something wasn't right. As her mind raced, she caught a glimpse of Elliot's strange companion disappearing into the darkness. Was it her imagination? Or was there something sinister about the way he moved? Why was this celebration not just a wedding, but a doorway to deeper mysteries? With her heart pounding and a myriad of questions swirling in her head, Clara knew the answers were just beyond her reach, but she was determined to find out. Clara gathered her resolve, fingers digging into her palms, as she watched the man in the dark suit meld into the shadows. The wedding revelry around her felt distant, like a world drained of color and light. Her heartbeat drummed a frantic rhythm in her ears. What could they possibly be discussing that warranted such secrecy? Her stomach twisted with a mix of longing and dread. Panic threatened to bubble up, but Clara pushed it aside. She had to act, and she had to act fast. With a deep breath, she stepped off the porch and onto the perfectly manicured grass, her heels crunching softly against the blades. Her every instinct screamed at her to retreat, but she had to know. Had to see what was happening. As she crept closer, blending into the omnipresent darkness, the sounds of laughter mingling with music became a haunting backdrop. She moved stealthily, like a shadow lurking on the periphery of a nightmare. A sneaky glance over her shoulder confirmed that no one seemed to notice her departure. Everyone was too fixed on the celebration, too absorbed in the joy that painted the air. And then there was Elliot, his back still turned, engaged in hushed conversation. The dark-suited man leaned closer, the outline of his figure a stark contrast against the dimming sky. Clara felt her pulse quicken. Anxiety surged through her, unraveling any semblance of calm. What was he doing? Questions felt like 1,000 knives in her gut. Suddenly, laughter erupted from nearby, pulling Clara's attention. It was the bride, dancing with abandon, her smile dazzling under the festival lights. but Clara's focus remained razor-sharp on the two men. Her heart thundered as she shifted, just enough to catch fragments of their whispers. She had to strain to hear, and as she did, something alarmingly chilling swept over her. "Reveal everything," the man in the suit hissed, his voice low, yet somehow cutting through the festivities. Clara felt herself freeze. What did they want to reveal? What bombshell were they sitting on? Crying could be heard from the other side, and Clara's thoughts jerked to the bride. What if this was about her? She couldn't turn away now. She needed to uncover the truth hiding beneath the joy, the truth threatening to shatter the fragile facade of this day. Just as Clara was about to lean in closer, the suit man's head whipped around. Instinctively, she ducked behind a large oak, her heart racing. The man was scanning the area, his eyes piercing through the dark like arrows. She held her breath, hoping he couldn't see her. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the man turned back to Elliot, and Clara seized the moment to peek again, but they were now deep in conversation, their voices seeped in urgency. What she could see, however, made her blood run cold. Elliot was holding something in his hand. Was it a ring? A piece of paper? And then, with a sudden sweep of his arm, he tossed it into the nearby bushes. Clara felt a jolt of adrenaline course through her. She had to know what it was. She stumbled backward, nearly crashing into a guest as her eyes caught a glimpse of movement behind the trees. Michelle, the neighborhood prankster, had been watching her. "What are you doing?" he whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "I'm figuring out what is really going on," Clara shot back, resolve spiking again. But before she could explain, the sounds of celebration turned dangerously hushed, leaving that uneasy silence hanging thick in the air. Clara squinted through the darkening evening. Had something shifted? Had someone arrived? Every hair on her body stood on end. The inquiries burning inside her were endless, but one nagged louder than the rest. What if she was already too late? Clara's heart sank, dread clawing at her chest as she turned, facing the bright lights of the wedding once again. Something was terribly wrong, and she could feel the impending chaos lurking just beneath the surface. What would be uncovered tonight would send shockwaves through the very fabric of their community. And as Clara took a fateful step forward, a dangerous thought crept into her mind. What if she was the one who needed to be revealed? Clara's instincts kicked in, pulling her back from the brink of stepping into the thrumming life of the party. The quiet scream of the wedding's festivity left her feeling utterly isolated. She glanced sideways at Michelle, whose eyes mirrored her shock. The laughter and joy felt so far away now. "What do you mean you're figuring things out?" he pressed, glancing around nervously. The twinkling lights from the tent cast eerie shadows, flickering like warnings. "Elliot, he's up to something," she whispered. "I need to know what that man in the suit was talking about. It could affect everything." A sharp intake of breath warned her that the silence had stretched too long. They had become part of the background, an ominous echo behind the blithe celebrations. Clara felt something shift in the atmosphere, a collective inhale, as if the guests sensed something was coming. Michelle's expression turned serious. "We shouldn't be here. What if he's involved? What if they're dangerous?" Clara shook her head. "I can't just walk away. I want tea." Once again, she turned toward where she'd last seen Elliot and the man in the suit. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a raw, frantic beat that matched the energy crackling in the air. She darted among the decorations, a row of soft white flowers that seemed to mock the tension bubbling beneath the surface. Suddenly, a loud crack shattered the fragile quiet. Glass shattered, the sound sharp enough to cut through the revelry. Clara spun around, her eyes wide. A nearby table lay in disarray, and guests began to murmur in shock. The laughter turned into hushed whispers, eyes darting toward the origin of the noise. Then she saw it. The man in the dark suit had stepped into the light, his face twisted in anger, pointing a long finger at Elliot. The delight of the party twisted into confusion and fear. Clara edged closer, the tension in the air thick as molasses. "Enough of your games," the man snarled, raking his fingers through his hair, his voice rising sharply. "I know you've been keeping secrets. I want answers." Elliot, visibly shaken, took a step back, his cool demeanor slipping for the first time that day. "I told you, it's not what you think," he said, the undercurrent of desperation in his voice clear. "Just give me time to time." The man barked, cutting him off. "Do you think this is a game?" His eyes scanned the crowd, and Clara felt a rush of panic. She ducked behind a large hedge, her heart racing. She heard the rustle of fabric nearby, and she looked up to find Michel peering over the bush, his expression rigid. "They can't be talking about the bride, right?" he muttered, glancing back toward the tent. "Who else could it be?" Clara whispered. But before she could finish, screams echoed from somewhere deeper in the crowd. The guests erupted in chaos, shifting like a wild tide under the weight of panic. "Everyone stay calm," a voice yelled. But it barely cut through the clamor. Clara's stomach twisted further. The world she had known, the laughter, the shared joy, was crumbling. She edged back into the chaotic huddle as whispers of danger and Groom circled around her. Clara's mind raced. Was the man in the suit involved with Elliot's past? Was the bride somehow wrapped up in this too? As she pressed forward, trying to piece together the fragments of chaos, one thought blazed brighter than any other. Whatever dark truth was being churned up, it wouldn't stay buried for long. She had to find Elliot. But as she turned to search for him, a shadowy figure approached from the corner of her eye, a flash of the dark suit. Clara stiffened, her breath caught in her throat. She was running out of time. What would happen if she confronted the truth now? And as the fear sank into the pit of her stomach, a new question loomed. What if the truth was what she expected? Clara's feet moved instinctively, adrenaline propelling her through the chaos. The panic surged, spreading like wildfire among the guests. Screams sliced through the air, echoing the turmoil inside her heart. She could feel the mulled whispers of dread coiling around her, squeezing tighter with each passing second. Where did he go? She murmured to herself, weaving through shifting bodies. She needed eyes on Elliot, but all she witnessed were anxious faces lost in the throes of fear. Was it the bride? Was she in danger? Michel struggled to keep up with her rapid pace, panic in his eyes. "Clara, we need to get out of here. This isn't just some misunderstanding." "No," she shot back, her voice sharp. "Not until I find him." The thought of Elliot caught in this mess struck her with urgency. If he was entangled with that man in the suit, he might need help or worse. Her gaze swept across the frenzy, catching glimpses of the man, the suit. Was he still talking to Elliot? Clara dashed toward the fringes of the tent, heart pounding while her mind buzzed with unanswered questions. Then, like a beacon through the chaos, she saw him. Elliot stood surrounded by two other guests, their faces twisted in concern, looking over their shoulders as if to assess their surroundings. He looked rattled, tousled hair, and that ever-cool demeanor slipping. "Elliot!" she shouted, waving her arms. But before she could reach him, hands seized her arms, pulling her back hard. "Clara, no!" Michel yelled, an edge of desperation in his voice. "It's too dangerous. Come on." He tugged at her, but she resisted. "Just a second." She wrested herself free, compulsion driving her closer. But just as she closed in, the man in the suit turned swiftly, locking eyes with her. His glare froze her in place, a glassy stare that burrowed into her soul. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and flee, but she couldn't move. She was entranced by the fury radiating from him. "Enough!" the man roared, pushing through the crowd toward Elliot. "You can't hide forever." Clara felt her breath hitch, a cold wave of dread crashing over her. Elliot stiffened, taking a step back. "I don't know what you think this is about, but there are people here," I said. "Enough." The man lunged, his hand reaching for Elliot's collar, and Clara was blinded by a surge of adrenaline. "No!" she screamed, launching herself forward. She shoved between two onlookers, heart racing. The spectacle of the party faded to a blurred background. All she could see was Elliot, and the unmistakable threat looming right in front of him. Suddenly, the crowd erupted again, screams morphing into a chaotic cacophony. The tension snapped, and Clara watched as the man's hand connected with Elliot's shirt, a fistful of fabric, and rage painted across his face. "Don't you dare!" Clara shouted, stepping into the fray, every ounce of courage propelling her forth. But just as she reached for Elliot, a loud crash came from the entrance. The side flaps of the tent flew open, and in stormed a group of men in dark uniforms. The atmosphere shifted again, this time with authority slicing through the wild disorder. A loud voice boomed, "Everyone, clear the area." Clara froze, the sight of the officer sending icy fingers of fear straight to her core. "Elliot!" she yelled again, as chaos spiraled in yet another direction. But as she stood paralyzed, she noticed something, a glint of metal peeking from Elliot's jacket. Her stomach dropped. Had he been hiding something? Something dangerous? "Is everyone okay?" an officer shouted, but no one seemed to pay him any mind, panic still spreading like a disease. Clara, piecing it all together, realized she was standing at the edge of something enormous, something that could unravel lives as easily as it had unraveled the wedding. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. Steeling herself, she turned back to Elliot. But before she could reach him, the officer pushed past her, confronting the dark-suited man. The glint in her vision made the truth near unbearable. What secrets were tangled in these lives? And as Clara's heart raced in terror, she wondered if uncovering the truth would shatter everything she held dear. Was she ready to find out? Clara felt the blood drain from her face as the officers moved like a tidal wave through the chaos. The man in the suit wasn't just a threat. He was part of something much bigger, and if that glint of metal in Elliot's jacket was what she feared it was, then they were all in grave danger. "Get down!" one of the officers barked, and guests dropped to the ground, instinctively seeking shelter from the unfolding storm. Clara's heart raced as she scanned the crowd. The wedding guests transformed into a frantic mob, each one trying to make sense of the pandemonium. The aromas of the celebration sweet pastries and spiced drinks were overshadowed by the stench of terror hanging heavy in the air. She remembered how joyful everyone had seemed just hours ago, and now all that happiness was unraveling into sheer panic. "Elliot!" she shouted again, desperately trying to spot him. She saw him still grappling with the man in the suit, whose expression had morphed from furious to dangerously calm, like a storm that has just gathered strength. His fingers were curled tightly around Elliot's collar. "Let him go!" Clara yelled, the words tearing from her throat, but they felt small against the backdrop of chaos. Michelle was at her side, tugging her arm. "We need to move, Clara. Now!" His voice broke through the haze of dread, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from Elliot. Then, everything shifted in an instant. The officer blocking the man in the suit stepped forward, his face set, issuing an order that resonated through the crowd. "Step away from the young man." His voice carried authority, and the danger felt palpable. The man in the suit sneered. "You think you have the power here? You have no idea what you're dealing with." His words dripped with venom, and Clara felt the air crackle with tension. "Please, Elliot, say something," Clara urged silently, willing him to find a way out of this hell. Her gut twisted as the thoughts raced. What if he had something dangerous hidden away? Was that glint in his jacket a weapon? Just then, in the midst of the chaos, a woman screamed, and Clara turned to see another officer struggling with an approaching figure, a woman in a white dress trailing behind him. The bride? Me? No. Clara tried to call out, but her voice was lost in the tumult. The woman's eyes widened with confusion and horror as she grasped what was happening. They're here for us, Mia cried, glancing back at the man in the suit as if she could feel the sinister weight of his presence. Back off, one of the officers warned again, pulling out a baton and advancing toward the dark-suited man. Clara could feel the tension pinching her lungs. What was this man capable of? Finally, as the man released his hold on Elliot, Clara surged through the crowd, shoving past horrified guests now clinging to their loved ones. Elliot! She shouted again, her voice hoarse with urgency. He seemed dazed, looking up as if finally emerging from a fog. Clara, he stammered, glancing from her to the officers. The panic in his eyes mirrored her own. Before she could reach him, the dark-suited man lunged again, a glint of metal in his hand that reflected the dim lights of the tent. Stop! Clara screamed, but time felt like it had slowed. The air was thick, every breath an eternity. The officers' shouts mingled with the screams. Some guests were still frozen in shock, while others began to flee, abandoning the celebration to escape this nightmare. Clara's heart hammered in her chest as she realized that every second counted. Then, just when it seemed everything would break apart completely, the sound of shattering glass echoed from the entrance. The crowd gasped, instinct screaming that danger was closing in. As Clara watched, panic transforming into raw terror, she felt a foreboding chill sweep through her. What have you done, Elliot? The question formed in her mind, and she needed answers. But before she could voice it, the sound of sirens sliced through the air, approaching rapidly, mixing with the confusion around her. Everything was spiraling out of control, and Clara feared they might not survive the truth when it finally surfaced. Clara grasped the reality something sinister was at play beneath the surface, and uncovering it would demand a price she wasn't sure she was ready to pay. And just as she pondered whether they would emerge unscathed, a familiar voice rang out from the crowd, chilling her to the core. You're too late, Clara. Who was out there, lurking in the shadows, and what other secrets were lying in wait, ready to erupt? Clara's pulse quickened as she whirled around, searching for the source of that chilling voice. A woman emerged from the crowd, hands trembling at her sides, eyes ablaze with malice. It was Sophie, the neighborhood gossip, who had always looked for reasons to stir troubles. Clara felt her stomach drop. Sophie knew too much about the tensions between the couples and families that intertwined their lives. What do you mean I'm too late? Clara shouted over the cacophony. But she could see the satisfaction curling on Sophie's lips, like a cat that had caught a mouse. The officers surged forward, barking commands. Get everyone out. But panic had taken a foothold, and the mob surged backward in fear, desperate to escape this nightmare. Elliot staggered, still dazed from the earlier altercation, his eyes wide. Clara, I didn't mean to. Not now, Elliot. She snapped, her desperation boiling over. She needed him focused. She needed answers. What did you do? Please, you don't understand. He seemed lost in the moment, the terror swirling around them suffocating him. Then help me understand. She turned her attention back to Sophie, whose smug grin widened. Why don't you tell her, Elliot? Sophie sneered, practically relishing in the chaos. Everyone should know what you've been hiding. Clara's heart dropped. The glint of metal, the explosive chaos. Was Elliot implicated? What could he have done that would draw such hatred? Before Clara could respond, the earlier officer shouted, urgency rising in his tone. We need to get control of this area. He moved forward, baton ready, but the man in the suit interjected, his eyes glimmering with unspeakable intent. Control? He laughed, the sound chilling. You have no idea what you're all part of. Suddenly, A flurry of movement erupted as a group of guests rushed toward the exit. Clara instinctively grabbed Elliot's arm, pulling him closer. "We need to go now." But Sophie was relentless. "You think running will solve it? You're tangled up in something far worse, Clara. He has already chosen sides." "Enough!" Clara screamed, feeling the weight of the world crashing down upon her. Sirens howled outside, like a wolf pack ready to pounce. In the distance, flashes of red, blue, and white lights pierced the darkness, illuminating the frightened faces around them. Clara felt the dread crawl up her spine. They were cornered, trapped between fear and a Neptunian depth of unknown threats. Just then, she caught a glimpse of Mia, her wedding dress smeared with dirt and tears, moving through the crowd toward them. "Clara! I need your help. What is wrong?" Clara felt the world spinning, unsure where to turn. "It's not just the man in the suit. There is someone worse. We're in danger." But before she could grasp the implications, a loud crash echoed by the entrance. The glass door shattered, fragments exploding across the floor, reflecting waves of color amidst the chaos. Frantic glances exchanged between guests, uncertainty rippled through the crowd, sending them into deeper panic. Clara felt her throat tighten as she turned to Elliot, searching for any semblance of clarity. His eyes were filled with fear and something more profound, like regret buried within. "Elliot, tell me the truth. Now!" But before he could answer, the suit-clad man lunged toward them, arms outstretched, and everything was set to erupt. And just then, Clara realized she had been blissfully unaware of the stranglehold secrets could have on lives. Would this night be the end of their dreams? With Sophie standing smugly to the side, whispering threats into the shadows, Clara faced the dizzying plunge into an abyss of revelations. As the chaos swirled, a question screamed in her mind: what dark connections linked all their fates? Clara's heart raced as the suit-clad man lunged, his intentions radiating through the crowd like a shockwave. She pulled Elliot back, her instincts screaming that whatever unfolded next could change everything. The crowd swarmed around them, faces glossed with terror. Clara barely noticed Mia's cries for help. It all spiraled too quickly: the room, the noise, the chaos. "Elliot, we can't let stop!" he yelled, breaking through the fog of fear. His voice held a raw edge as he faced the man in the suit. "You don't know what you're doing." "Don't I?" The man's grin revealed too much malice, eyes narrowing as he advanced. "You're all in way over your heads. Secrets have a way of surfacing, don't they?" As he spoke, Clara's eyes darted back to Sophie. A realization hit her. Sophie was the keystone in this mess. The woman thrived on turmoil, and now she had drawn them all into this unfolding nightmare. "Clara, we need to go right now," Mia pleaded, her face twisted with a mix of fear and urgency. "No!" Clara snapped back, tightening her grip on Elliot's arm. "We need answers first. Elliot, say something." I never meant for any of this to happen," he stammered, panic seeping into his tone. Desperation filled his eyes as the looming figure approached. "I was only trying to protect you both." "Protect us from what?" Clara pressed, the words rushing from her. The tension in the air thickened, an invisible wall building right between them. Before he could respond, another crash echoed from the entrance. A shadowy figure burst through the smoke of scattered glass and debris. Clara felt terror claw at her throat. Who else was here? The newcomer scanned the crowd, a predatory gleam in his eye. "You've all come to play, but let us not forget the stakes," he sneered, his gaze landing on the suit-clad man. "You're not as untouchable as you think." Clara felt a chill race down her spine. How many more layers were there in this sinister puzzle? Sophie leaned closer, words dripping with malice. "Told you there's a deeper game at play. You're all pawns, and it's getting real dangerous." "Enough." Elliot erupted, stepping forward, his voice vibrating with newfound strength. I want the truth, all of it. Now! The suit-clad man chuckled, glancing between the two figures. You really think you have the upper hand? You're not in control here. The real players are watching. The lights flickered, casting shadows that danced ominously across the room. Panic tightened its grip around Clara's chest, fear rooting her to the spot. She needed to think. She needed to seize control of this moment before they all fell apart. Suddenly, another lingering glance caught Clara off guard. A child, wide-eyed and terrified, clung to her mother's leg at the edge of the crowd. The sight jolted her back to personal realities, grounding her amid escalating chaos. Get out! Now! Clara shouted, turning back to the crowd, trying to marshal whatever panic she could. Head for the exits. Running 1T save you. Sophie screeched, her laughter grating on Clara's nerves. But Clara couldn't afford to listen. Fear had unleashed primal instincts driving her forward. As the guests began to move, Clara engaged with Elliot again, desperation spilling from her voice. What if there's a way to turn the tide? Can we outsmart them? But just as hope flickered, the man in the suit grinned wider, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. You'll wish you never asked that question. The urgency soared once more as they pushed through the throng, scrambling for safety and answers. Yet the impending dread loomed larger, leaving an echo of unease as they stepped into the darkness outside. Where did they go from here? And at what cost would they uncover the truth? The fresh air hit Clara's face like a slap as they burst outside. But relief was short-lived. The chaos that had suffocated the room now seeped into the night, palpable and choking. She couldn't shake the feeling that danger was lurking just around the corner. Clara, are you all right? Elliot's voice, strained and loaded with worry, pulled her back. She searched his eyes, recognizing the same desperation reflected in her own. What is going on, Elliot? She needed more than just fear, she needed clarity. You have to tell me everything. Now. He looked around nervously, the shadows seeming to swallow him whole. I thought I could shield you from this. From what? Clara pressed, clenching her fists. She felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins, electrifying every nerve. What did you get us into? Just then, a shrill scream shattered the air. Clara's heart stopped momentarily. Instinctively, they both turned as a group of people, some familiar, some not, rushed out behind them, faces twisted with horror, stumbling over each other in a desperate flight for safety. They're coming! A man yelled, his voice rife with panic. Clara caught sight of the shadowy figure from earlier, moving swiftly among the crowd, an unsettling grin plastered across his face. He watched them all, calculating, enjoying the chaos. Elliot, we can't stay here, Clara shouted, pushing him forward. Where do we go? Follow the river, he urged, pointing down the street, where a darkened path led away from the unfolding nightmare. We can lose them in the park. It's just a few blocks away. With no time to argue, she nodded, urgency propelling her into motion. They dashed towards the pathway, merging into the tide of frightened guests pouring out of the building. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, each heartbeat a reminder of the risk they faced. Then, as they rounded the corner, a blinding flash of light illuminated the night. Clara squinted up at the brilliant glow, revealing a massive vehicle pulling to a halt. Its imposing silhouette struck fear into her heart. A black SUV, the kind that screamed authority. What now? Clara breathed, scanning the scene for an exit. Suddenly, a door swung open, and another man stepped out, this one dressed in tactical gear, his expression stern and unyielding. Everyone, back to your homes. There is nothing to see here. His voice boomed over the murmurs of fear. Ignoring the instinct to comply, Clara felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Something isn't right, she whispered to Elliot. Clara, We need to go. Now! Elliot tugged at her arm, but she was rooted to the spot, body charged with foreboding energy. What do they want? She wondered openly, almost to herself. Moments later, the suited man appeared again, trailing behind the tactical officer, his grin even wider now, reveling in the tumult. You think you can run forever? His gaze locked on Clara, full of menace. The truth is going to catch up with you, whether you like it or not. Before Clara could react, a loud explosion shook the ground, a shockwave that sent her stumbling. She gasped, adrenaline flooding her system as screams erupted around her. What was that? Elliot shouted. Clara, we can't stick around for this, he yelled, pulling her away from the chaos. As they turned to escape, Clara caught a glimpse of something bundled inside the SUV, a flash of silver, glinting under the moonlight. It sent a chill creeping down her spine. Did you see that? She gasped. What are they hiding? With urgency, they began running down the street, the night closing in around them. They entered the park, darkness enveloping them, as the sounds of chaos faded behind them. But a new kind of fear loomed ahead, the fear of not knowing what they were running towards. How deep did this rabbit hole go? Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the hidden truths were about to surface, and it was going to change everything. Somewhere in the shadows, a voice whispered, "You can't escape your past." Clara shivered. What weight did this truth carry? Before she could question it further, Elliot suddenly halted. Look! Ahead, the path forked into two directions, a path leading deeper into the unknown, and another toward a flickering light in the distance. Which choice would lead them to safety or farther into danger? The decision loomed heavy as Clara's breath caught. Could they face the truth? Would they even survive to see it? Clara's heart raced as she stood at the crossroads, uncertainty swirling around her like the unseen veil of night. The flickering light beckoned like a siren's song, while the shadowy path whispered secrets only the brave dared to uncover. She glanced at Elliot, his eyes darting between the options, fear etching lines across his brow. Which way? She asked, voice trembling, desperate for his direction. Elliot took a step toward the light. It could be someone or something that can help us. But what if it's a trap? Clara countered, gripping his arm tighter. The mere thought sent chills down her spine. They had to be smart. The last thing they needed was to walk into another ambush. Trust me, he insisted, his tone firm, but Clara noticed the way his hand shook slightly. The other way is too isolated. We might get cornered without help. Though the flickering light offered a glimmer of hope, the shadows danced just beyond it, threatening to consume whatever awaited them. Clara swallowed hard. Okay, but stay close. They moved cautiously toward the light. With every step, the distant sounds of terror faded, replaced by an eerie silence, as if the world had paused to take a breath. Clara glanced back over her shoulder. Shadows flitted between trees, distant echoes of chaos still clinging to the air. Finally, as they rounded the last bend, they found themselves in a small opening. The light came from an old lantern hanging outside a ramshackle cabin. Its wooden boards creaked in the gentle wind, seemingly welcoming yet foreboding, like a mirage in a desert of confusion. Anyone home? Elliot called, but his voice quivered, barely above a whisper. No answer, but the soft rustle of leaves. Clara hesitated before stepping closer. Should we go in? Then she heard a sound of faint shuffle. The door creaked open, revealing an old woman with wild gray hair and eyes like steel. What do you want? She snapped, the edge in her voice slicing through the quiet. Please, Clara paused. We need help. There is something happening. People are chasing us. The woman's gaze darted to the shadows behind them before she stepped aside. You better come in quickly. You don't want those creatures to catch up to you. Clara stared into the cabin's darkness. Fear coiled tighter in her chest, warning her of the unknown. But the thread chasing them was far worse. Inside, the air was musty, filled with the scent of herbs and old wood. The woman gestured them toward a rickety wooden table, cluttered with various objects that looked half-forgotten, books, odd trinkets, and a map spread wide. "Do you know what they want?" Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper, heart thumping in her chest. The woman studied her carefully, wrinkles deepening with concern. "It's not about what they want," she said slowly. "It's rather what you possess, something far more powerful than you know." "What are you talking about?" Elliot interjected, frustration mingling with fear. "You've stumbled onto a war, children," the woman said, her voice steadying. "One that has been brewing for decades." Clara exchanged glances with Elliot, confusion brewing like a storm. "A war? What do you mean?" Before the old woman could answer, a loud crash echoed from outside with splintering, followed by angry shouts. Clara's heart raced as the shadows of men broke through the surrounding trees, their figures monstrous against the faint lantern glow. "Get ready," the woman called, pushing Clara and Elliot behind a stack of crates. "They've found you." Clara's breath quickened, panic rising. The fear of the unknown collided with the dread of their pursuers, a collision of fate that might seal their doom. "Clara, what do we do now?" Elliot's voice was tight with fear, but before she could respond, the cabin door began to splinter, and Clara's mind exploded with questions. What did they possess? Why were they being hunted? As the splintering intensified and shadows loomed closer, she realized they were on the edge of something much darker than she could comprehend. And then, with a final crash, the door was flung open. "Time's up." A voice hissed from the darkness. In that moment, Clara's world started to unravel, revealing a choice more daunting than the one they had just made. There was no longer a path of safety, only a battle for survival begun. What would they choose when faced with a choice that could change their lives forever? The cabin had become a fortress of shadows, the lantern flickering madly as the door swung inward, revealing dark figures silhouetted against the night. Clara's heart hammered, the pulse echoing her frantic thoughts. She felt the weight of the world crash against her, endless questions swirling. What did they know? What power did they possess? "Stay behind me," Clara hissed, instinctively standing in front of Elliot, desperate to protect him. The old woman, however, didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed, steely and unyielding, even as two figures pushed through the doorway. "Enough games." The lead figure snarled, his voice carrying a grim determination. Clara recognized him, the man in the suit. His gaze swept the room, each glance sharp enough to cut. "Where is it? I want to tell you anything." Clara stepped bravely forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The door burst open wider, as the others shifted in, a wall of intimidation. But beneath their bravado, Clara sensed desperation, a hunger for something they thought belonged to them. The old woman raised her hand, silencing the tense air. "You'll find nothing here. This young girl has no idea the power she holds." "What power?" Elliot breathed beside Clara, the confusion evident in his eyes. The woman turned to him, her voice low and steady. "It's a legacy, one embroiled in darkness, and now you two are caught in the crossfire. They think they can reclaim it." Clara's gut tightened. "Why us?" The man in the suit stepped closer, eyes narrowed. "You're playing with very old forces, child. Hand it over, and you might just walk away." "Not a chance," Clara shouted, heart racing. The room felt like it was closing in, shrinking under the weight of tension. "Then you've chosen poorly," the dark-suited man replied, his lips curling into a frightening smirk. "Let us see how tough you really are." Suddenly, the figure surged forward. Clara's instincts kicked in. She grabbed Elliot's hand and shot past the nearest intruder just as a fist swung toward her. Adrenaline propelled them, racing out of the cabin, bursting into the cool night air. She could feel the fear pulsing around her, real and raw, threatening to consume everything in its wake. "Where do we go?" Elliot gasped, breathless. "To the river," Clara shouted, without thinking. It was their only chance. If they could make it there, they could perhaps vanish into the dense woods lining its banks. They sprinted down the path, branches clawing at them from either side, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind. Clara dared a glance back, catching a flash of shadows weaving through the trees like phantoms in a nightmare. As they reached the river bank, the cool rush of water greeted them. It was disorienting, a stark contrast to the chaos unraveling behind. "Clara, I can't swim," Elliot said, panic threading through every word. "It doesn't matter. We have to try." She could see the silhouettes growing nearer, the threat looming larger with every beat of her heart. The river surged with a turbulent current, sparkling under the moonlight. "Clara!" Elliot pulled her to a halt. "What if the water is too deep?" "Trust me. We'll stick close together. We just have to get across." Clara felt the thrill of reality settle, every instinct prickling, sensing the danger creeping closer. "Now!" she cried, plunging into the icy water. It sent shivers through her body, but she propelled herself forward. Elliot hesitated at first but followed, the urgency breaking through his trepidation. They swam, hearts pounding, every stroke a fight for life against the rushing current. Clara gingerly gauged the depth under her feet, willing his fear away. But the dark shapes gathered at the riverbank, voices tightening with anger. "You can't escape," the man in the suit shouted, desperate, but their voices were quickly drowned out by the swell of the water. Clara and Elliot's instincts compelled them to push harder against the tide, their hands entwined. They floundered their way toward the river's edge, senses heightened by adrenaline. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged on the other side, breathless yet exhilarated. "We made it!" Clara gasped, pulling herself onto the bank. But as they collapsed to the muddy ground, the dark silhouettes loomed closer from across the water, shouting, cawing like birds of prey. "We're not safe yet," Elliot warned. Clara scanned around, still trembling from the cold and the chaos. "What now?" Then Clara noticed something gleaming near her feet, a small object caught in the mud, the glint reminiscent of metal, familiar yet buried in her mind. "Wait, the ring," she explained, recognizing its significance from the whispers of the wedding. Elliot's eyes locked onto hers, realization dawning. "That's what they're after? It's a collector's item or something?" "Not just any item," Clara whispered, recollecting the old woman's words. "It connects us to something bigger." Before they could process the consequences, shadows surged closer, and they ready to flee anew. Clara held the ring tightly, her own worth swimming in uncertainty, but determination surged through her. They had to end this. Together. "Run!" Clara urged, and they took off, deeper into the dark woods, the ring clutched tightly in her fist. The flight for survival was only beginning. The truth was at their heels, but they were no longer afraid. They would fight, they would reclaim their destiny. As the trees swallowed them whole, the past hung heavy, but Clara could feel a glimmer of hope shine through the darkness. The fight wasn't over. The battle to uncover the truth had only just begun. This was their moment, and they would seize it, whatever the cost. Subscribe immediately, so you don't miss the next explosive chapter in this unfolding saga. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and show your love. Flood the comments with your reactions, thoughts, and theories you don't want to be left out. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, so don't wait even one more second.